Good morning, friends, and welcome to another Sutta Study session this morning with our wonderful guest, Ajahn Kovilo. So Ajahn Kovilo will be giving a talk about one of the suttas from the Anguttara Nikaya. Please feel free to type in questions at any time, and I'll read them out for him to answer at the end. So whenever you're ready, Ajahn, please go ahead.
Okay. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Good morning, everybody here, everybody online. It's nice to be talking Dhamma early in the morning. This is, right now I'm visiting, as many of you, probably most of you know, Empty Cloud Monastery in West Orange, New Jersey. One unique feature of this monastery is that there's a lot of formal Dhamma study based on the suttas. We've got this hour and change in the morning, and then another hour plus in the evening before our actually it's after our formal evening meditation. And yeah, I really enjoy that. So we've got an hour sitting from 5:30 to 7, so just half hour chanting before, and then talk Dhamma for a while, and then do the same thing in the evening. So it's a nice way to spend our time, in my opinion. So yeah, today the subject of our conversation will be Anguttara 5.97, which is called the Katha Sutta, which literally means the discourse on speech or talk. But what it is basically 5 methods for supercharging your breath meditation. So anybody who practices breath meditation, this discourse will give you 5 other areas of your life which you can look into to just get the most out of your meditation. So I'll actually just start by reading the whole discourse in English. And I'll be reading the Ajahn Tanisaro translation. Bhante Siddhasu had linked to the Sutta Central translation, in which Bhikkhu Bodhi translates most of it, but he elides some parts which I think are useful to go over. So I just put a link to the Ajahn Jeff translation. Okay, so endowed with 5 qualities, a monk pursuing mindfulness of breathing will in no long time penetrate the unprovoked release. Which 5? They are a person who imposes only a little on others, one of few duties and projects, easy to support, easily contented with the requisites of life. That's the first point. Point number 2. They are a person who eats only a little food, committed to not indulging their stomach. Point 3. They are a person of only a little sloth, committed to wakefulness. Point number 5. They get to hear at will, easily and without difficulty, talk that is truly sobering and conducive to the opening of awareness. That is, talk on modesty. These are 10, so get ready to memorize. I'll repeat them again in case you miss it. Talk on modesty, on contentment, on seclusion, on non-entanglement, arousing persistence, virtue, concentration, discernment, release, and knowledge and vision of release. That was all point number 4. Point number 5, one reflects on the mind as it is released. Endowed with these 5 qualities, a monk pursuing mindfulness of breathing will in no long time penetrate the unprovoked release. So this is a great discourse. I heard a story about the Dalai Lama, one of maybe his first times or early times giving a large talk in America. And he gives, it's a full week long of teaching, and he's talking about, you know, in depth on a very elaborate discourse. And maybe on day 3 or 4 of the retreat, someone raises their hand and says, "This is great. Thank you very much for coming, but could you please just summarize what's the fastest way? What's the fastest way to get to awakening?" And the Dalai Lama just kind of looks down for a while, and the silence in the space just kind of fills with this. Okay, what's going on? Is the Dalai Lama okay? What's happening? And finally, you kind of see him kind of wipe some tears away from his eyes and look up and say, "There is no fast way," and just really turned off by this, what might be seen as American attitude to want to get things the fastest and the most efficient way to do things. And yeah, fair enough. There is aspects of the Dhamma. There are aspects of the Dhamma, specifically knowing dukkha, which really just necessitate patience. And all of us have to cultivate patience on the path, because you can't predict how fast the results will come from the actions that we do. But as the Buddha says here, there are things which we can do, which will help us in no long time to penetrate the unprovoked. So I'll just be kind of going through this discourse, pointing out a few things. Again, the discourse is addressed to monks and is talking about monastics, but this can really just be a catch-all term for any practitioner, any meditator, people who are devoting their time and attention to cultivating what the Buddha is teaching. So a monk pursuing mindfulness of breathing, so this is anapanasati, which is any form of breath meditation, will in no long time penetrate the unprovoked. So akupang pativijati. So this akupang here is basically a synonym for nibbana. And kup is the root, which means like to shake and to tremble. And akup is a prefix which means just the opposite of that. It negates whatever the root is. So it's that which does not tremble, that which doesn't shake, that which is not agitated and constantly ill at ease and just constantly unsettled. Nibbana is the highest settling, the highest calm and relaxation. And this manifests most readily and most essentially in the posture of the mind. So the mind of an arhat, the mind of someone even in jhana, is just very, very still, very, very settled. The one of someone who's attained nibbana, it's absolutely settled, totally unprovoked, unmoving. But you can also see it in the body posture to some extent. I was this past year in a university program, and all of our classes were online on Zoom, and it's a bit odd to be seeing yourself constantly on the screen along with these other people. And one of the people in my class is a Zen practitioner, and it was even more unsettling to kind of compare myself with him, just seeing his body, every day. He was just he sat like a rock, and we weren't even meditating. We're just, talking about Buddhist classics to some extent, but also talking about like Homer and discussing other non-Buddhist literature. And he would just constantly be sitting like a rock. And I think that does have a correlate in his mental state. He obviously had been practicing meditation and stillness for a long time. And I could see myself, I was just constantly bobbing around. And, actually, honestly, I was mostly doing standing meditation and to some extent doing walking meditation, just walking back and forth. And there's nothing wrong with walking meditation. There's really nothing wrong with movement, but it was just a contrast that I saw between myself and this other practitioner. So now we come to the first quality, which will speed up and give a power boost to our breath meditation. You can think of it like Super Mario Brothers a little bit. This is like, when you bounce your head on a brick and a star comes out, or a mushroom comes out, and you jump on that star or mushroom, and you get super powered for some period of time. And that's what these 5 qualities do. So the first element, which can superpower our practice, is that one is a person who imposes only a little on others. One has few duties and few projects. They are easy to support, easily contented with the requisites of life. So this first term, one is apato, which Ajahn translates as one imposes only a little on others. This isn't a very common term. Pata means literally to stick out, or to kind of make yourself, maybe to take on new projects, or we could say to be maybe overweening or zealous in the types of worldly projects that you take on. There's a Zen Japanese proverb, which is something like, the high nail gets slammed. So it's like, if you put yourself out there, then especially in a society that appreciates conformity, if you put yourself out there, then you're gonna get the hammer. And this is an interesting aspects of our lives to look at and to examine. To what extent do our projects, the projects that we take on, to what extent do they help our progress in Dhamma, and to what extent do they lead away from Dhamma? And I don't think it's actually an all or nothing, totally this way, that way type answer. There are projects which we take them on and it leads to growth in Dhamma. And there are also projects which we take on which lead us away from Dhamma. So when you're about to take on a new endeavor, it's good to ask yourself, will this be for my long-term welfare and happiness? Will this be for growth in the things that I want to grow in? Or will this lead me away from stillness of mind? One is apakicho, one is of few duties. So this is usually apa means little or few. Kicha is the future passive participle, the gerundive of the root come, which we have for kama, which means action. So kicha is that which should be done, or these are duties. Apa, few duties. One is of few duties. That's a literal translation. But one translation of this, which I really like, comes from Lumpur Liam, the abbot of Wat Pah Pong, who, if you go and visit him, you'll see that it's almost like he's constantly doing stuff. Wat Pah Pong is a big monastery, and he really likes work projects. He's constantly leading the monks on building this building, renovating this wall, doing all these things. You look at him and you might say, this monk has no idea what it means to have fewness of duties. I mean, it looks like he doesn't even meditate, he's just constantly on these work projects. But if you actually, spend any time in his presence, then you can feel a stillness, even when you get within the, for me, it's like a 10-foot perimeter of him. And again, you might say this is, just some kind of fantasy that I'm pasting onto him. And it might be the case, but other people also experience this. And whatever the case, I certainly experience it around him. And I think that he does have an inner stillness, even if, no matter what he's doing, and even if it is a work monastery, still, how he translates this fewness of duties, apakicho, is, what is a duty? What is a burden for you? Really, it's a mental shift. If I'm, building this wall, fixing this building, if I'm not taking it on as a burden, then is it a burden? No, the mind is exactly where it was when I was doing sitting meditation. Your work, whatever you do, if you work in construction, if you come to a monastery, you're cleaning up a room, you're making food for the monastery, really, essentially, the mind can stay in the same space as when you're meditating. That is essentially true, and we want to more and more be able to realize that. So we want to be, even if no matter how many duties we have, no matter how full up our Google Calendar is, or whatever the schedule for our days says, and no matter what, someone else might look at that and say, "Oh, you're totally burdened with worldly responsibilities." How do we hold those responsibilities? Can we hold them in a way which, I've got few duties because I don't think this is a burden. So one is subaro. Bara is a burden. One is not a burden on other people. One has few burdens oneself. Santusato, one is content. One knows contentment with the requisites of life. So that's the first thing, the first aspect. So how does our work life relate to our meditation? So if you want to superpower your breath meditation, then look at how you're spending the rest of your time. Breath meditation is, for most people, more difficult to do when you leave the meditation cushion. But how you relate to your work will have an effect. There's a residue, there's a remainder. If you're on point through your whole day, you're staying balanced, you're staying upright, you're staying clear, your mind is crisp and clear, crystal clear throughout your day, then you come to sit down and your breath will be right there. You come right to it and everything is bright. The second quality is how we relate to food. So here it's apaharo hoti, an odari katang anyuto. So one eats only a little food and is committed to not indulging their stomach. So this is actually a very unique formulation of what's usually just referred to the Buddha as bojine matanyuta. So bojina is food, mata is the measure. One knows the measure of food. In this discourse, one says it's apaharo, ahara, few or little food. One eats little food. And I think personally, the more common formulation of bojine matanyuta, so one knows the measure of food, is more useful because, fewness or littleness of food might not always be the answer. If you haven't eaten food for 2 days or even for 24 hours, the correct answer on the multiple choice test might not be eating little or eating less is the answer for what you need to do. But bojine matanyu, moderation in eating or knowing the measure of your food, is referred to as always the right thing to do. But this is interesting. What does it mean to eat only a little and to not indulge your stomach? Be committed to, be yoked to, anuyuto, to be devoted to not indulging the stomach. It's a good general principle. And when you do that, when you pay attention to how you're relating to food, then it has an effect on your breath meditation as well. You can see that if you eat a big, huge meal, or if you eat certain types of foods, then actually you can honestly see how it affects your breath after the meal. Your breath becomes more coarse and more heavy for many people. Even while you're eating, this can be a great stopgap, a great break. Literally, you're putting the break. As you're eating, can you come back to your breath, say in between bites? You're just constantly totally into the food, but then you can take a break. Okay, how is my breath right now? Can I come back to this point of center rather than being totally pulled into your bowl. The next realm that can superpower our breath meditation is one is a person of only a little sloth, and they are committed to wakefulness. Apamido hoti jagaryang anuyuto. So one is devoted to jagara, to wakefulness, to being awake. And again, this is, I think, less pointing to the number of hours you sleep per night and more pointing to when you are awake. Are you actually awake? When your eyes are open, once you've pressed the snooze button for the final time, and while you're going about your day, how awake are you? How bright is the mind? This is what it's pointing to. In oftentimes you'll see people saying the Buddha said only sleep for 4 hours, or this Kruba Ajahn or that great teacher said just sleep for 4 hours. That's what you should do, and that's beautiful. And if they can do it, that's amazing. Way to go. And people have brought up, and it's my experience as well, when you are getting more into meditation, you do need less sleep. If your meditation is progressing, if you really are able to still the mind, because the brain uses calories, and to the extent that we're able to settle our thoughts, our thinking process, be able to still our mental fabrications, then we're using less calories, and the body has to expend less energy to keep awake, and you're on this cool burn when you are able to use your brain and use your mind in a way which is efficient. So being committed to mindfulness, being committed to wakefulness in the sense of knowing. Yeah. Next quality is one gets to hear at will, easily and without difficulty, talk that is truly sobering and conducive to the opening of awareness. So this truly sobering is, I think, a translation of abisalekika. So abi is a prefix which means like really or super or very or in the direction of, or like an exclamation point on whatever the root word is. And saleka is sung likati, which is lik is the root which means to carve away. So saleka means is often translated as effacement. So what are the things which lead to ultimate effacing of self? So these are talk on modesty, contentment, seclusion, non-entanglement, arousing persistence, virtue, concentration, discernment, release, and knowledge and vision of release. Yeah, this is great. And this is, when you're talking about these things, that is practice. Practice isn't only what we do when our eyes are closed and sitting on the cushion. And hopefully, as I mentioned, you come to a monastery like this, and we get to talk Dhamma and hear Dhamma, for hours in a formal setting each day. And in an informal setting, you have all these occasions for talking Dhamma. People come to the monastery because they want to be talking about things which are conducive to enlightenment, conducive to awakening, conducive to peace, conducive to mental tranquility. And these are the things which lead in that direction. There's another discourse in the Anguttara Nikaya, I believe, which the Buddha actually praises talking. He says, you shouldn't be talking about kings and ministers and chariots and talk of the village and talk of the town and talk of clothing and this list of 32 different subjects which tend to lead in a worldly direction. I mean, you start talking about cars in the monastery, and of course you can give similes for like Four Noble Truths, or like the four wheels of a car or something like this. But if you're talking about like how fast, how much faster your car goes, then your neighbors or something like this, then you might just be reifying and kind of boosting ego rather than diminishing unhelpful ego attachment. So, yeah, we want to be talking about things. The Buddha said, don't talk about those things, but talk about these 10 things. So these are the 10 subjects which lead to stilling and lead to peace, and can even be called fundamentals of the holy life. Fundamentals, the the
Adi Brahmacharya.
Adi Brahmacharya, the fundamentals of the holy life. So the first of these is talk on modesty. Pali is up ichakata. So again, we've had lots of upi or uppa in this discourse. So that is fewness, and icha is desires. So talk on fewness of desires, a fewness of wishes, modesty. Contentment is santuti. This is the second thing that's good to talk about. The third is seclusion, viveka, non-entanglement. And you might think as you hear these, I mean, how much talk on seclusion and non-entanglement can you do before the person you're talking to starts thinking that you don't want to talk to them? And it's fair enough, but yeah, I think there are ways of talking about seclusion and non-entanglement, which, humans, we are social creatures. There is, all of us have a range. There's a different level which all of us feel comfortable with in terms of how much social interaction we need. There's extroverts and introverts, and even with extroverts and introverts, there's a range and a spectrum of how much an extrovert needs input from others versus lesser externally dependent extroverts and introverts as well. There's shyness spectrum. There's comfortability with talk, and arhats still have personalities. Even people who have put aside greed, anger, and delusion fundamentally still have aspects of their personality which are not dependent and bound up with greed, anger, and delusion. So in Thailand, you do have very, very quiet, people who are believed to be arhats. Say, like Ajahn, maybe Ajahn Sim, maybe not Ajahn Sim, Ajahn, people who can really talk, say Ajahn Chah. He was a talker, he could just talk for hours after a meal with people who come to visit. And Longtam Mahabua could be, very fierce and, could talk a mile a minute and just would never run out of things to say. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they are addicted to talking. If people ask questions, then they can talk. And then if nobody has a question, they're perfectly content just sitting, being quiet as well. They have the complete contentment with either mode. And that's kind of, I think, what is a useful skill. We definitely want to be able to sit contentedly by ourselves, but if you're not able to live a life of a absolute hermit, which very few people, even monastics, are, then you also want to be able to cultivate this habit of being okay in social environments. Even if you're an introvert, it's good to be able to flex your extrovert muscle, or at least be able to fake it, for periods when, you need to interact with other people, and that's helpful. And so this is a skill, and so if you do have this need to interact with other people, say you are an extrovert, that doesn't mean there's no place for you in a monastery. I personally, I say that I'm more on the introvert wing of things. But yeah, I'm not fully comfortable being by myself for 24 hours a day. Even say 23 hours a day, not comfortable. There's part of me that does need to have interaction with other people, and I'll admit it. Yeah, that's a hang up, or that's a dependency. It's a crutch. But fair enough. I'm still a human. I'm not enlightened. We have these needs. We're human. We've got these social. Think of it in evolutionary terms, if you want to think of it in past life terms. I've been cultivating this human karma for a long time, this social karma, and got this need to interact with people. So if I'm going to interact, yeah, why not talk about these things that the Buddha praised? Like, yeah, what does it mean to be secluded? And really talking about with other people about that, and hearing their perspectives. And it doesn't just have to be this like, totally dismissive, I'm going to bring up seclusion so that I can shut you up and I can get back to my room kind of escape clause. Arousing persistence, talk about virtue, concentration, discernment, release, knowledge, and vision of release. Yeah, talk about these things. Yeah, how to give yourself more energy. And for us these days, the realm of talk includes books. It can include podcasts if you've got Wi-Fi, if you've got internet. Yeah, these are the things that you should be Googling. Yeah, ask somebody what they care about, and I forget whose quote this is, but yeah, if I ask a man what he cares about, then I might believe him. But if I see his calendar, then I'll know what he really cares about. And similarly, if I look at your Google Calendar, if I look at your Google search results for the last year, then I'll know more something about what you really care about. And yeah, I feel like my Google search results would, there's a lot of searches for this type of thing. I can't say, And what about you? What do your search results say about what you care about? Yeah, productivity. Yeah, it's a whole genre of modern day thinking, which there's Dhammic lessons to be learned in productivity books about how to put forth energy, how to schedule your day so that you've got energy. And no matter what the source, if it's a Buddhist monk, if it's a Buddhist nun, it doesn't have to be Buddhist. We can learn from Christian wisdom, from Islam wisdom, from Judaic wisdom, from non-religious wisdom, secular, whatever, totally like worldly wisdom. There are things to learn, and we can take those lessons and bring them into our Dhamma practice. Even from the realms of yoga, as talking about energy, this often happens in the room. Like people will, like myself included, like your posture just like perks up. You want to like fix your posture, and there's a whole genre of posture books and posture websites, which there is a correlation between how we orient our bodies and how our minds are balanced. And when you slump and slouch, that leads to slouchy mental states. And when you put yourself upright, the Pali word is uju, and it pertains both to mental states and to physical posture. So read and listen to podcasts and do as much about arousing energy as possible. Virtue, sila. This is another realm which is good to talk about. And it's something which is not talked about much in wider circles. Or if it is, it can be mixed up with unhelpful perspectives. So many translations from the Bible, there's all this, shoulding, just constantly, or shouting, which is even, more emphatic. Just thou shalt do this and shalt do that and should do this and should do that. And I don't know if those are correct translations, but for modern listeners, the shooting on oneself is just not really helpful. So Buddhist precepts are taking on a training, Sikkhapadang Samadhiyasmi, as we chant. I take on this training. I'm voluntarily taking this on. That's the Buddhist approach to virtue. It's a training. It's not a commandment. Talk to concentration, discernment, and release, and knowledge of vision of release. So those are things to talk about. So find people who are also interested in talking about these things. Search things out on the internet that help you cultivate these things. Incline your mind in this direction. Your mind, there's a statement in the Buddhist teaching that whatever one inclines their mind to, that will become the natural inclination of your mind. It's the Majjhima Nikaya number 19, the Dvaita Vitaka, the two types of thoughts. So however you incline your mind, or whatever you think and ponder upon, that will become the natural inclination of your mind. So, what do you think about? What do you read? What do you listen to? Who are you talking to? Because that will become the inclination of your mind. The final aspect, the final super boost for your breath meditation is one reflects on the mind as it is released. Yatha vimutang chittang pachavekati. This is a great thing to be developing in tandem with your breath meditation. There is a Tibetan practice called Dzogchen, which is basically the method of just knowing, of being awake and aware in this present moment. And it's said to be a practice which you can just come back to. It's a new stance. You basically I'm spinning off with whatever my thoughts are, but as soon as I realize that I'm wandering here and there, actually, if you cultivate this practice, it is a faculty of the mind. It is possible to jump to a observing perspective, and that can be thought of as one level of panya vimutti. So vimutti is release, and it's you disengage. It's like you put your car in neutral. The gears can still be moving, but you are now in neutral mode, and I can just see, maybe I had too much coffee this morning. My body is really my body is agitated, but I can know that, and it doesn't have to be a problem. This doesn't have to be a problem mind. This doesn't have to be a problem mind. That's what this quality, this dzogchen, this panya vimutti is. And can you do that? Because it's not necessarily the case that anyone who develops breath meditation will be cultivating this perspective, this ability to shift into neutral, this ability to take a higher and disengaged, but also engaged perspective. It's a different skill, and you need to, or you don't need to, but if you want to, it can be a good support for practice. And it's probably better to get Dzogchen teachings from someone who actually practices that all the time, but just to know and believe that this is something which is possible. And there are teachings in the Pali Canon which similarly point to this, just right here. This is actually yathavi mutang chitam pachavekati. One is able to take this neutral perspective on things. So regardless of what's going on in your body or your mind, you're able to know it and have that level of release. You can just think of it as this is just one level of vipassana. So clear seeing is when you can know there is ill will present, there is passion present, there is restlessness or doubt or clarity or whatever, you know it as it is. The mind is agitated, the mind is peaceful, the mind is liberated, the mind is not liberated. You can know all these things, and that's an awareness release. So figure out how to do that. And you might not believe it's possible, or you might not believe it's orthodox Theravada Dhamma, but yeah, maybe it is. Maybe there are ways of directing your mind which you haven't realized or haven't tapped into yet. And I would suggest that it is possible to do this, and that it does support your breath meditation, because you can't always be with the breath. It's most people can't always be with the breath, especially people who've got all sorts of other duties. To the extent you can, and to the extent you want to, then try more and more to be with the breath. If that's your main avenue, that's your main vehicle for the Buddhist path. But this is a correlate practice. Can I disengage and know vipassana, vimutti? Can I know these things? So endowed with these 5 qualities, a monk pursuing mindfulness of breathing will in no long time penetrate the unprovoked. So there are these 5 states. So we'll open it up to questions in just a few minutes, but just to give people another mnemonic device, another memory aid. Perhaps people know of the Roman room or the method of loci. These are Western names for memory techniques. One useful one is basically you take your present moment faculty of memory and your working memory, and you imprint kind of long-term memory things into the working memory. So what I want people to do now, if you want to memorize these 5 super boosts for meditation, is think of someone, a person, who is a super boosted Dhamma practitioner. Or you can think of Super Mario, if that works. But anybody who is very easy for you to think of, you can imagine that person's whole body standing up. Yeah, okay. You got that person in your mind? Yeah. Now, that person, you can imagine them having 5 different regions. They've got the head, torso, the middle region of the body, the legs, and the feet. That's 5 regions. Now I want you to imprint, to take a symbol for each of these 5 duties and imprint it on these 5 different regions of your person. So the first quality is that one imposes only a little on others, one has a few duties and projects, easy to support, easily contented with the requisites of life. So think of a symbol for that. So fewness of duties. So how about a hammer just lying on its side? So I'll think of the Dalai Lama. So on the Dalai Lama's face, I just imprint a sideways hammer, put down the duty of work. Yeah, okay. Dalai Lama's face, there's few duties. On the Dalai Lama's torso, or whoever yours is, someone that eats only a little, that's easy. The stomach is related to eating little. The third duty is that one is of little sloth, committed to wakefulness. So on the Dalai Lama's mid region, it's just maybe like Z symbols, the traditional sleeping symbol with a line through it. So that's kind of, he's wearing boxer shorts that have that symbol, that motif on them. And the Dalai Lama's legs is someone who gets to hear without difficulty these 10 topics of conversation. So speech bubbles. He's wearing speech bubble pants with all these good qualities, good subjects. And then the feet, the Dalai Lama's feet, they reflect on the mind as it's released. So how about roller skates? Yeah, basically able to move and course along throughout our days in a way which is, not stuck and not fixated. So that's a mnemonic device, and you can use it with this discourse. And now you've got your person who's yoked to these different super boosts of meditation, and you can think of other people for other 5 qualities, or figure out other methods that work for you. So I'll stop talking now and open it up for questions.
Namayang Dhammakataya Sadhukarang Dharamase Sadhu 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 Anumodami. Thank you, Ajahn. Yeah, so there's actually quite a number of comments and questions. So I'll go ahead and start going through the comments and questions online, and also invite any of the monastery residents, if you have questions, to go ahead and ask. First off, a monk named Mangala Agradam Bhikkhu says, "Good evening, Bhante Kovilo. I'm from Thailand. I've been to meet you in Angtong Paok Monastery." So apparently you met this monk at some point.
ชื่ออะไรนะชื่อไทย Oh, well, it's good to see you. Thanks for tuning in.
Okay, and the first question, Michael says, does your work monastery story lead us to think of the value of practicing in city environments? Stillness in the midst of chaos. Without that ability, perhaps our practice is less firm.
Okay, so I think the question is about, if unless we challenge ourselves, perhaps by living in a city environment, won't our capacity for meeting this challenge of being awake in the midst of chaos, won't that be lessened? Is that a summary, perhaps?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Does your work monastery story lead us to think of the value of practicing in city environments? Not necessarily. I mean, it really depends on the practitioner. I mean, just as there's a range of introvert to extrovert, there's also a gradation of people's capacities to maintain mindfulness while they work. Yeah. So I would put Lumpur Liam on the very far end, the very developed end of this capacity to remain mindful and awake and wise while he is up on, scaffolding, installing tiling on a, 30-foot tall cafeteria for a monastery in rural Thailand. I think you just have to know for yourself to what extent can you maintain mindfulness while you work. And then, we do want to get better. We do want to increase our capacity for being able to work with mindfulness, but start where you are. And the Buddha did recommend, the Buddha did praise people going forth in whatever capacity that is, people going to seclusion. Yeah, that's one of the 10 subjects for conversation. Is the Buddha didn't say, yes, just be totally involved and totally unsecluded and totally in the world, and work, do whatever you're doing with mindfulness. Well, he did also say that, but the Buddha acknowledged that we're not all fully adults in that realm. We're not all fully mature in that realm. And start where you are. A lot of us are just toddlers in this realm, yeah? And the Buddha gave space for that. The Buddha did create a monastic sangha who live in forests, yeah? Who live by themselves for many hours a day and can practice being mindful in a hermetic, in a very sealed, a very closed, a very clean, a very pristine environment where I'm practicing on my mindfulness very intently. Sitting meditation is a very focused form of this. And then hopefully I can take that. And a monastery is a great place for that, because we do have time for formal sitting, but there's also time for formal working. But it's not overwhelming. There's There's times for being together and times for being by oneself. So you can, it's a good laboratory. But if you are already very skilled in this capacity, you can remain awake and alert in the midst of living in a city. Great, great. Do it, because the world needs more people like that. So.
Okay, thank you. And next one, Michael asks, sure, moderation in eating is the way to go, but I do not deny, but admit, all too often moderation is followed by craving. I want another portion of spaghetti, but alas, I've had enough. Help.
Yeah, so this is another translation thing. So, although this sutta does say apaharo, one should be one who eats little, the more common formulation is bojane mata anyu. So, one knows the mata, one knows the measure, anya, one knows the mata, the measure of eating. So, you know what works for you. Yes, so the English word moderation in eating, as you say, has all these implications with it. Like, okay, moderation means me kind of like, eating very little now, or it means, not taking that piece of cake. But yeah, be intelligent. Know your measure. Know your measure, and your measure isn't the same as anybody else's measure. So yeah, moderation maybe is not a good concept for you, but know your measure. If you by restraining or holding back now is going to cause you to relapse and is going to cause you to flip later, then then maybe let yourself take a little bit if that will cause you to be more restrained in the future. One useful tip for trying to reflect on what types of food you should eat are what I call the cake test. So that is the kusala akusala test. So kusala means skillful or wholesome, and akusala is unwholesome. So KAK, the cake test. So basically, when you're looking down the food line, you want to ask yourself, if I was to eat this, would it lead to the arising of wholesome mental states or unwholesome mental states? And if you know that if I eat this whole pie, it's going to lead to unwholesome mental states, then don't eat that whole pie, friend. But if I eat, this celery, maybe it will give rise to wholesome mental states or whatever it is, and maybe eating that whole pie will lead to wholesome mental states for you. If you do it with metta, then fair enough. The Buddha didn't prescribe foods. That's a good thing for everybody to realize. He did prescribe times for eating, and we can't eat human flesh or foods which were specifically animals which were killed for us. But other than that, the Buddha, didn't say we had to eat organic or other things. So, some thoughts.
Okay. And Gita says, Bante, when one is alone, taming and guarding the mind is much easier than when one is with another person. Can you kindly offer some advice on how we can skillfully guard our mind and thoughts?
Well, I might suggest that it's not necessarily that your mind is more tamed when alone than with other people, but maybe the types of people. Look at the people you're hanging around, because that maybe it is the case that regardless of who you're with, then your mind is more tamed. But for me, actually, if I'm with, say, Lumpur Liam, if I'm with Ajahn Pasanno, if I'm with people who are very restrained and have a very guarded mind, then I'm more guarded than even if I was with alone. So yeah, look at that. Look at the types of people you're hanging around, and yeah, how can you skillfully guard your mind and thoughts when you're with other people? It's easier. The most restrained people are the most restrained because they put themselves in restrained and good habit environments. You hang out with people who have the habits you want. So that's some thoughts. Yeah, try to hang out with people who are more guarded in mind, and that will, to some extent, if you're open to it, it does rub off. It's like walking through fog. You walk out and your clothes are wet, even though you didn't even notice it at the time.
And Nancy says, I am in a psychotherapy and theology grad program. My anger, cynicism, and judgment of Christianity is increasing with my engagement with Buddhism. Any tips to manage this in myself?
Yeah, I mean, the true cynic, is cynical of their own cynicism. The true doubter is, doubtful of their own doubt. And I think you've started to look at that. And the uh, Kesaputta Sutta, or the Sutta to the Kalamas, points to this. If you're doubting things that are doubt worthy, then that's a good thing. But that said, you really want to make it clear in your mind. The Buddha praising praiseworthy things and censure-worthy things, or blaming things that are worthy of blame. But he did not praise blaming people that have blameworthy thoughts. So, yeah, it's good to be very clear in your mind if you do find some fault, because yeah, probably every religion, there are faults probably in every religion, every system of belief, certainly in the way that they're lived out. But be very clear in your mind to note that you are cynical and doubting of the doctrines and not the people. And yeah, if your cynicism is mixed up with ill will, then it will show, if only in your own mind, but you'll also feel it. And yeah, try to disincline from that. That's a form of attachment for yourself, and that's a form of ill will. And yeah, the Buddha didn't praise that. So if you are practicing ill will towards other religions and practicing attachment to your own religion, the Buddha would not have praised that. So you're not being more Buddhist if you are uh, attached to things. So. Yeah.
And Nancy also says, post-lockdown, I feel pressure to engage with people more. I have found peace in more isolation. Any suggestions on how to reopen my life slowly to retain the peace and space that lockdown has given me?
Oh yeah, I'm with you, Nancy. I mean, lockdown is awesome. Gosh, I wish. I mean, I was in this university program, and we're doing all our meetings on Zoom, and all the other students are like, "God, I hate this Zoom. I can't wait till it's over." And I'm like, I would definitely live the rest of my life on Zoom. If I could, have somebody do some Grub Eats or whatever these programs, deliver food to my door, and I'll do everything on Zoom. But yeah, if it can be unhealthy though, and yeah, look at to what extent your attachment to it is helpful or unhelpful, and to the extent which, and also look at how much your situation are necessitating that you be pulled out. This might be a good chance. This lockdown, people's schedules have shifted. Maybe you can go to part time in person, part time at home, and yeah, see if you can work that out with your employer, and that's fair enough. You don't have to just jump in and throw yourself in the deep end if it feels like the deep end. You see if you can, yeah, tweak the worldly conditions, but also tweak how your mind is relating to the worldly conditions. And yeah, I think that last quality of these five, the Dalai Lama's rollerblades, as we say, are that one reflects on the mind as it is released. So yeah, as you go out into yeah, a less lockdown world, try to know your discomfort, and yeah, do it slowly and be kind to yourself.
Great. And Michael asks, is my habit of using the relevant sayings of Jesus to express Buddhist ideas when talking with Christians okay or not so okay?
Totally. Yeah, in my opinion, sounds great. I mean, the Arana Vibhanga Sutta, Majjhima 30s or 40s or something, says, not he says basically, when you go somewhere, they might call a bowl or a pot, or they might call it a cham or a jam or whatever. Don't insist on local usage. So that's one instance of a principle which you can say, yeah, you don't have to insist on the Buddhist idiom. You can speak to people where they're at, and if Jesus's principles are in line with Buddhism and the teachings of the Buddha, then and many of them are, then way to go. Yeah, memorize more, and may we live more in line with those teachings ourselves.
And Kumo was asking, does matanyuta mean just right? I remember reading that Ajahn Chah said those words frequently.
Yeah, mata could mean, it means the measure. I think what the Ajahn Chah quote is ru pa, so gin pa, so eat just the right amount. Pa means, pa jai means to be content, but pa means just enough, just right, not too much, not too little. Pa, just, just right.
Okay. And Amaranta says, I have lived alone for many years. How can I improve my seclusion? I try not to live a very social lifestyle.
That's a great question. Yeah, because just because you're alone doesn't mean you're viveka. Just because you're alone doesn't mean that you are practicing seclusion as the Buddha taught it. There's discourses where the Buddha, is talking to this Tara, who this senior monk who basically eats alone and doesn't do any work with the rest of the community and basically just hangs out in his room in his hut all the time, and you never see him. And the Buddha knows that monk's heart and says that monk is not secluded. He's living with a second. And who is that second? That second is craving. So yeah, the more that you can, if you are living in seclusion, that can be a great start. But some people might be fooling themselves that I'm in my room, I'm in my hut, so therefore I'm practicing the Buddha's teachings. This much is enough. But the seclusion of the Buddha is a deeper one. It's a internal seclusion in the mind. So yeah, can you turn off your devices? Yeah, that is not only do you have a second, we probably got craving, but you've got like a third and a fourth and a fifth and however many Twitter followers and infinite basically. If you've got Google, if you've got Wi-Fi in your secluded room, then you're with several billion other people. So yeah, see, and yeah, test your limits with that. Yeah, turn off your Wi-Fi for certain hours of the day and see if it brings up. It probably will bring up dukkha, and that's to improve your seclusion. Become more intimate with dukkha. Figure out if you can be with uncomfortable with, be with your actual unpleasant sensations to a greater degree.
Okay, and that's the last of the online questions. Do we have any questions from the monastery residents? No. So I think that's it for this morning. So thank you, Ajahn Kovilo, for sharing some Dhamma teachings with us this morning. And to everyone who's watching, please join in again this evening at 7:30 New York time for the next in Bhante Sumita series on the gradual teaching. So we'll end the session with 3 sadhus. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And we'll see you next time.